Hello and welcome to Books of Blood. My name is John. It is about 1 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. I've had a cup of coffee, I'm awake and everything, and now I've got a book review for you. So what I'm going to be reviewing is Midnight in the Pentagram, and this is edited by Keane. Two things I'll say about it. First of all, this was sent to me by Silver Shamrock Publishing in exchange for an honest review, and that is definitely what they're going to get from me. This also completes two of the prompts for the Evil-a-thon challenge that was created by Kasha over at Kasha's Book Cemetery. The first one is to read a book that is over 400 pages. This thing clocks in at about 550 pages or 530 pages. I'm not sure, but it's big. Okay. The second one is to read some horror short stories, and this is slam full of horror short stories. All right. That being said, and you probably can't see me holding up the book because I've still got the image of the poster of the image of the book posted on the thing here. Anyway, that being said, I'm going to go ahead and read the synopsis, and then I will give you my thoughts on it. Okay. As the clock's pendulum steadily counts down towards the midnight hour, the growing scent of brimstone hangs heavy in the air. The universal symbol of all that is evil, the pentagram or the inverted pentacle, has been carved in the hardwood floor. Its shape is often described as the goat of lust attacking the heavens with its horns during the witch's sabbat. Five obsidian candles flicker as the incantations begin. Who will be summoned during this unholy evening? Will it be Baphomet or Belial? Maybe even Lucifer himself. The roof timbers groan, stressed plaster drops to the floor. The demon approaches, holding its ancient grimoire filled with evil stories written in blood. And here they are. Okay, like I said, this was sent to me in exchange for an honest review, and I said I was going to give an honest review. So first thing I'm going to do is tell you about a couple of the stories that I liked, that I enjoyed, the ones that stood out for me, okay? The first one being, let me get to the table of contents because I don't remember all the titles of these stories. The first one being was the very first story, and that was The Corn Maidens by Brian Morel. This is about a girl that is banished from her town. You don't really know why. You just know that she has done this absolutely sinful thing, but you'd have no idea why. Well, she gets picked up by this other group, this cult. They worship. It's kind of a mix of the Children of the Corn and maybe the Wicker Man or something like that. But I found it to be a very effective, very pretty frightening little tale of folk horror, because I'm pretty sure that's what you would consider it to be, would be folk horror. I thought that was really good. Excellent story there. The other one, Second Sight by Alan Leveroni. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but this is about a woman who's been blind all her life. She's had this operation, I guess you would call it, I think it's a cornea transplant. And she gets the bandages removed, and she can see a little bit, or she can see. But she keeps having these visions of this woman who is being tortured by this cult. And when I mean tortured, I'm talking about stuff like getting a pentagram cut into her chest and then burned out, or then having it burned. And so this kind of plays havoc with her and this new sight that she has. Now this is a story that's kind of been done before in various ways, but I really like the approach that the author took with this particular story, okay? Or with his version of the story. So that's another standout for me. The third and final one, actually there are two more. I'm going to go with two more. There's a Black Jar Man by Mark Steensland. And this is pretty much about a boogeyman and the origin of this boogeyman. And a lot of it takes place, in fact, the entire story takes place in the days of slavery and plantations and all that, so there is that trigger if if you're not into reading stuff about slavery and definite racism. I mean, because the plantation owner is just a cruel man. Okay, then you might not want to read this, but overall, it's a pretty good little boogeyman story, and so that's why I'm picking it right here to stand out first as a standout story. And then finally, Babylon Falling by Brian Keane. Now, I believe this is my first time reading anything by Brian Keane. I've got a couple of novels of his. I just haven't read them. But now, after reading this, I definitely want to pick up his work and read more by him. I've always heard that his zombie stuff is really good, so I'm going to have to definitely pick that up, even though I'm not a huge fan of zombie fiction, all right? Anyway, this is about an army squadron, and they're in Iraq in about 2003 during the Iraqi conflict. There's this huge freaking sandstorm that they're trying to get out of. I mean, this thing is just horrible. It's just sand gets into everything. I mean, literally just everything, all right? And they get captured by this one of the Iraqi groups, not the Al Qaeda, I'm not familiar on that kind of thing, but I think they're called the Zindaya or something like that. And they are tortured in order to call forth a jinn or a genie, but I believe that's the original title for a genie was jinn, which is Djinn. And yeah, it's a pretty terrifying little story. So that's another one. Okay, so now let me tell you about the things that I did not like about this book. Overall, I'm giving this book 2 stars. All right, and the reason being is because it just seemed to me that so many of these stories were about the same thing, but told in a different concept or a different way. I had several occasions where I would be reading a story, and usually it would be one told in the first person. It would usually be one, and I don't remember the exact names of the stories. I mean, there's 20, 30 stories in this thing. It's a big book, okay? But some of the stories, I'd be reading them, and I think, okay, well, that's pretty good. But then I go to read the next story, and it would be the same thing. It'd be a first-person story, usually about somebody getting themselves into a situation with a demon or the devil or whatever. And I'll be sitting there reading it, and it's almost the same as the one before it. And it's like, wait a minute, didn't I read this story already? And then I realized, no, I didn't. It's just that these 2 stories are put together, or placed together, and they just seem so much the same. And that kind of threw me off. And, that just the pacing of it, or the arrangement of the stories. Also, I got to the point where I'm sitting there thinking, how many ways can you talk or write about demonic possession, whether it's voluntary or involuntary, because some of the people in these stories do voluntarily choose to be possessed. How many ways can you talk about somebody selling their soul or things like that? And it just got to the point where the stories became tedious for me. Now, this is no slight on the writers. The writers, these stories, I've read a lot of stories by different writers that are in these books that I have enjoyed. Stephanie Ellis, I read Bottled. I enjoyed that. Let me see. Mark Steensland, I just finished with Coffin Shadows, which he co-wrote with Glenn Creech. Todd Kiesling, I have sung Todd Kiesling's praises many a time on this channel with Scanlines, Devil's Creek, and of course The Final Reconciliation, which I consider an absolute masterpiece by him. I love that story. But just these stories in general, the pacing or the arrangement of these stories, I don't know, it just made it very tedious for me to read. And just the way some of them seem so similar to others, I think that if they had arranged these stories where you didn't have stories that were similar to each other, one right after the other, it would have been a lot better. And I'm not saying that because the stories that I did enjoy, the ones that I mentioned, I'm not saying that if I didn't enjoy these stories, it would be a 1 star or a lower rating, but just the arrangement and just how it seems like the book kind of repeated itself so many times, like I'm doing now. I'm sorry about that, is the reason I give it 2 stars. All right. So anyway, that's my review of Midnight in the Pentagram. 2 stars. I wish it could be a higher rating, but I just don't see it. I can't do it, and they did people do want an honest review from me. So that's my review. Midnight in the Pentagram, 2 stars. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great afternoon. Bye.